Welcome. Today is a regular meeting of the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners. It is Wednesday, December the 21st, 2022. I have with me in the room Greg Poshman. I have staff Rich Engelhardt. I have Abby Cheney, who is going to help us through any computer issues that we might have. And on Zoom, I have Steve Child. Steve, thank you for being here, helping us meet our quorum. Kelly McNicholas Curry is picking up her father at the airport, hopefully sometime middle of this afternoon. Her dad's coming in for the holiday, and Francie is on her way to Denver. So it's me and the boys here today, and we're going to have a great agenda. So starting off, Rich, are there any additions or deletions to our agenda?
Oh, thank you, Patty. No additions or deletions.
Okay, and the first, we have public comment. Are there any members of the public sitting in the room here who would like to speak on any items that are not on today's agenda? Seeing none, and Abby, I don't think we have anybody online. Nope. So seeing no public comment, I'll bring comment back to the board. Steve, would you have some commissioner comment?
Yes, I do, Patty. Thank you. I talked about this yesterday, but last week, Patty and I had the opportunity to go to the dedication of the fire station number 46 on West Cypress Creek from the Roaring Fork Fire District. And I told you I would show you the coin that they gave to us. So let's see, I'm gonna have to unmute my background probably.
Oh, we can see it, yeah.
I mean, unblur it. So it's station 46.
Nice.
And it's like a commemorative coin that they had made, and then there's a depiction of it.
That's really
And I
nice.
think Patty and I were both most impressed by the 3 apartments that they have included at the fire station for firefighters to live at. And they're very, very nice. They have a terrific view of Mount Cypress and the upper West Cypress Creek Valley. I would urge people, young people who are energetic and are going to be living around here, who would like to look into being a volunteer firefighter, you should check with your local fire station, whether you live in the Aspen Fire Protection District or Carbondale or in the Basalt Snowmass Village area, where the Roaring Fork Fire Protection District is. I know they could always use some help, so I urge people to look into that. That's all I have.
Steve, now the big question is, where are you going to spend your holiday?
Well, I'm going to be here at home. Christmas Eve, I will be at Snowmass Chapel singing with the Snowmass Chapel Choir, 2 services at 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock for Christmas Eve. And that's always a fun group to sing with. My favorite song is kind of a gospel song that we sing. We sang it one other time and it like brought the house down. So I'm looking forward to singing that one again.
Give us a couple of bars,
Yeah.
Steve.
No, that's okay. You have to come. You have to come. It's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, what a wonderful life.
And we know you just had grandbaby. Steve has his first grandbaby now. And she's got him wrapped around his little finger right off the bat, I'm sure. So happy holidays to you, Steve, to you and Molly and the rest of the family. And because we won't see each other until the 1st, after the 1st, the 3rd. Unless we're really lucky, run into each other at some holiday festivity. So, Greg, would you like some public comment?
Sure, a little comment just regarding what's been on my mind lately with we've got some really interesting decisions and challenges ahead of us where we've got climate change, which is a global existential crisis, which needs to be addressed locally and regionally, and it's kind of an all hands on deck situation if we're going to take it seriously, and I think our county has done a pretty good job of that. But we also have really strong environmental values about protecting lands and protecting rivers and protecting backcountry. And sometimes you get two sets of environmentalists in conflict. You've got the environmentalists who are trying to solve an existential crisis by, I'm thinking first of all about our coal basin methane mitigation. There was an article in the paper that said that there's a resistance to the idea of going in to mitigate the methane in coal basin because they are concerned about damage to the surfaces in coal basin. So all of a sudden we have these conflicts where you've got two environmental values in conflict. I'm seeing it in southern Nevada also, where you have organizations who want to put in solar farms, but now they've got a NEPA process to go through, and they're getting a lot of resistance. So 97% of our nation's energy is stored in hydroelectric, but we also have movements to remove dams and remove hydro while we're going into a 1,200-year drought. And so I'm trying to think about all, as I think about all these things, my head heats up because there's some cognitive disconnect there. So I just wanted to make people aware that these sort of conversations are going to become more frequent, and that we really need to be thoughtful about how we approach getting things done expediently on behalf of reducing carbon emissions, but while also protecting the natural world. So good luck to us.
So that's a really cheery way to start off the new year.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Oh.
I'll be in the bar.
Yeah. I'll join you without a mask and a nice shot of Jameson's. That's what I need
That's
for the cold.
what you need with some lemon and honey.
Yeah. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to tag on to what Greg said. On an annual letter from Rocky Mountain Institute, I noticed that they have, one of their initiatives that they have undertaken is to work with coal communities who are losing their coal mines are being shut down, or their power plants are being shut down. So they're incredibly heavily impacted by that. And Rocky Mountain Institute has two steps that those communities can take to create, high-paying jobs that the people who were in the coal industry could get into other careers that would be sustainable and long-lasting and keep their, it's usually small towns in western Colorado are the ones that are most affected by that. We want to not abandon the people there, and it's really essential that the coal power plants be shut down because they're so incredibly bad for the carbon footprint from that. So I'm glad that Rocky Mountain Institute is an incredible think tank coming up with really innovative ideas that are economically feasible and have worked really well in many countries around the world. So I thought I'd bring that up. I just noticed that yesterday on a thing I got in the mail.
Yeah, Steve, I'll tag on to that. Many, many years ago when they shut down the Henderson mine over in Clear Creek County, abutting counties, Grand County, Summit County, Clear Creek County, worked along with Northwest Colorado Council of Governments and with the State Department of Labor, Resources, to come up with training programs for those miners from Henderson to do solar. And it worked really well at that time. It was not as smooth, but not as a difficult transition as everyone had anticipated, and very exciting because at the end of the day, I think the miners were happy to be out of the mines and up on the surface for most of their lives. So yeah, that program worked really well, and I think that's an impetus for us looking at other coal facilities that are mining that are shutting down and turning to green renewables. So it's at the end of the day, I think it's a positive for everyone. It's just that transition is not as easy for some as we would like it to be.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, of course.
So my two favorite quotes are both Amory Lovins, the founder of RMI, who said that they practice applied hope. It's, you find a situation like that and you try to figure out how to create a solution using your hope as a motivator. And the other comment that I like is Bill McKibben, who says, when you find an opportunity like that, you push as hard as you can on it. You find the largest lever you can and push on it. And then E.O. Wilson said that we can't afford to be anything but optimistic. And those are my mantras. I keep repeating that to myself and practicing it. If you practice the optimism, you'll find solutions. And along those lines, regarding the coal companies and the abandoned mines, there are companies that are developing gravity storage technologies to be used in abandoned coal mines. The Henderson mine is interesting because they've got a couple of 3,000-foot deep shafts which could be repurposed for gravity energy storage, and they're exploring that now.
Interesting.
And then in a conversation with NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, a week or so ago, we learned that they're developing gravity storage for abandoned or decommissioned wells. So they'll have a massive weight that might only be 7 inches in diameter, a cylinder, and they'll put in a gravity storage system in an old abandoned well. It'll help cap the well, and it will provide a certain amount of power through the gravity storage.
So it's a win-win.
So if we could take all the decommissioned oil wells and gas wells in the country and turn them into gravity storage mechanisms, they would provide a modicum of power compared to the gas, but it's still a positive thing. So that's what NREL's working on. So we can practice optimism.
Interesting. That might be a way to cap some of these abandoned mines we have that are such a risk factor to people wandering through those lands. That's interesting, Greg. I didn't know that. Okay, my comments. Of course, again, we're expecting a Arctic frost, Arctic chill, subarctic, whatever they were calling it. I've heard that the temperatures are actually going to be colder in Denver than they are up here. So I want everyone to stay warm out there. That means our streets will be a little more slippery. So please be careful. I know walking is always an obstacle, and I'm hoping that for those who are visiting in town who might be watching our meeting when it runs again and again, will pay heed to the fact that sidewalks are to be walked on by pedestrians, not down the middle of the streets. Crosswalks are to be used, and you need to look both ways before crossing the street, as we teach our children and our grandchildren to do. So please be safe out there. Enjoy the holidays. It's going to be beautiful here. It's going to be truly a white Christmas that we've all been waiting for. And hopefully it won't get too cold for everyone to get out and enjoy the beautiful outdoors that we live in. So, that all being said, I want to wish everyone the happiest of holidays and a healthy and happy 2023. So, moving on our agenda. First item is minutes of December 7th regular meeting and December 13th special meeting.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Motion.
Thank you, Steve and Greg. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Next item on our agenda is a first reading set for public hearing on July 11th. I've already moved us into summertime. January 11th, 2023. It's an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners approving a lease agreement, there's Dan, with Aspen Skiing Company for a ski ticket kiosk at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport. And Dan, would you please lead us through? This is our first reading. We will set it for a second reading public hearing on the 11th of January.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Dan Bartholomew, Aspen-Pitkin County Airport Director. A little while back, the Aspen Ski Company, also known as SkiCo, approached the airport with the perhaps opportunity to put a ski lift ticket retrieval kiosk in the baggage claim area of the airport terminal. We saw this as an excellent idea from a customer service aspect to our clientele that comes in and out of the airport, and then also to the Aspen Ski Company. But it also allows them to reduce the number of trips they make to hotels and resorts in the area delivering ski tickets. So it takes some of the vehicle miles off the road for them as well, and from an environmental standpoint. This also offers a slight net positive revenue, very slight, to the airport. This device takes up about 15 square feet in the baggage claim area, so it's very small. So based on a internal ground rent perspective, it's a very small net positive revenue, but we think it'll be an excellent customer service piece to add to the airport without any negative impacts, and would only be positive. So we're seeking your approval to move forward with an ordinance to codify having this in the baggage claim area of the terminal.
Great. And it can be utilized for not only winter tickets, but summer tickets for the outdoor activities on the mountain?
I believe so. Right now, I think they're focusing on the winter tickets, but I don't see why it couldn't be reconfigured to address other things as well.
Great, thank you. Greg?
Only comment would be, I think it's a great idea, and it's a good pilot to see what else we could do in a limited space out there. My first thought was, well, we could bring back the carbon credit program, carbon offset program, and maybe have a kiosk that sells people carbon offsets to help us make everything green here and electric. But we could also contemplate other sorts of ticket sales or other things that would help make it easier for the visitors and reduce the travel time. So I think it's great, and I would make a motion to approve it if we're ready.
Yeah, but I'm just going to add on, Greg, I think that's a great idea to put for people who are departing, not arriving, a kiosk there where they could, well, either direction, they could buy them retro instead of having flown in, but and try and create our own program where the money stayed local. That's something really worth thinking about.
Corps is working on it already.
Oh, well, I thought I was ahead of the curve, but I guess
No,
I'm
you're
not.
right.
I'm following
you're teed
behind.
up perfectly for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Steve, do you have a second for Greg's motion?
Yeah, I'll second the motion, and then I wanted to ask Dan about the location. I presume it's the red dot on the map in our packet, located kind of midway there near the exit out into the parking area. And that, I don't know, it seems like it's right in the middle of where there will be a lot of traffic going, but I'm sure that you have thought about the location of it. Is that location gonna actually work, or is that gonna create congestion by the exit?
No, that location should work fine. It actually is leaning against a structural post that is there. And we've relocated some, recycling receptacles that we had there that were normally there. So it's not offering any additional problems in that particular location.
Okay, yeah, if it's by a post that's already there, it's not gonna, people are walking around that anyhow, so
Correct.
I don't think that will block anything then. Okay, that's good to hear.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. So I have a motion. I have a second. Any further comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Next item, and this was set for public hearing again on January the 11th. This is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County authorizing acquisition of the Craig Ranch conservation easements. Dale, please.
Come
And
on
Paul,
down.
please. We are excited about this item on our agenda today.
Hi, Patty. Greg, I'm Dale Will, the Acquisition and Special Projects Director for Pitkin County Open Space and Trails.
And I'm Paul Holsinger, the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Manager.
Do you notice their smiles?
I know.
These guys have massive grins on their
We're
faces.
happy guys today.
I know.
We
We
also
got a happy
realized that-
audience before us. This is such a pleasure.
Our titles are also so long that we were like,
We
oh, we
like
were just going
that.
to do it ourselves.
And I'm going to bring up a map if I can still
I'll switch
operate
places
this.
with you. You start talking and I'll do that.
Well, I want to see if I know how to do this.
We have an esteemed audience. I'm hoping that you will.
Where'd it go? Okay.
All right.
There's two on that flash drive, so we want the proposal map. Yeah. What we're here to talk about is a proposed contract for the acquisition of conservation interests on the Craig Ranch. And we're getting our map up, we've got two different maps, and the first one is to show the status quo of what's out there now, which you kind of have to understand in order to understand what it is that we're proposing that the county buy. So this is the Craig's property, and I'm so happy that they're here. We will bring them up for their own comments in a little bit. But starting kind of at the top center, this area that's purple, Michael, who's here, rezoned that rural and remote and used that as a sending site for TDRs to go elsewhere. So that piece is essentially sterilized, although is not currently benefited by a conservation easement with all the things that we like to have in those. And then moving down to that kind of half crescent with the all-important building envelope right in the middle of it is an area where Michael had gotten approval for a home site within that little box, and at the same time, I think it was 2007, put the rest of it in a conservation easement. So that's sitting there with vested rights that could go up to 10,000 square feet for a home site. And then moving on down the hill, down along the creek, are two other parcels that the Craigs own that each have existing building envelopes that were approved for houses of 7,500 square feet respectively. And you can see that going up the creek, this backs up onto the Flying Dog conservation easement that was one of the earliest conservation easements granted in Colorado by George Stranahan. So what we are proposing in this contract is to get rid of two of those little boxes. So we could, I guess, go to our next map. And if you approve this contract, and if we are successful in closing it, which I have no doubt we will with such talented counsel as Dave Myler being involved helping the Craigs, this is where we would end up. That entire hillside above Woody Creek Road goes into a conservation easement. We essentially take the existing easement that's on part of that and amend it to extend all the way to the federal land boundaries and to eliminate that house site up on the top. And then down along the creek, you can see the conservation easement would cover one of the two parcels, and the building's envelope site there doesn't go away entirely, but it's no longer available for residential uses, can only be used for agricultural structures. And what this leaves is a single building site on approximately 796 acres that is all protected for lots of different conservation values. And Paul has spent a fair amount of time up there administering the easement that we currently own. Maybe you're best equipped to comment on why we would want to protect this stuff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been visiting this property since I started 11 years ago and watched Michael steadily remove barbed wire from that, from these hillsides. He's always been diligently spraying weeds up there as well. It's actually one of the more restrictive conservation easements we have in our portfolio. It's very wildlife focused. It specifies that no fencing can be along the road because it's a wildlife corridor, and it's worked out great. And like I said, Michael's been pushing for that. It even restricts motorized recreation on the property, which we're just carrying forward to this greater 600 acres. And earlier this year, I usually visit it kind of in late summer, so we're not disturbing too much up there, but we were up there this spring, and I think we saw 3 different groups of elk. But it's an astounding property. And then when you move down below, we have some more of that extremely valuable irrigated acreage down along Woody Creek here, a really impressive riparian corridor. It's really wide and really beneficial to wildlife. And when you look at the property next door that's been, you can see the creek from the road on that property. When you get past that, you can tell that riparian resource has been maintained. And this red area, when you take into the consideration that there's a good chance this red conservation easement has been recorded at right now. I haven't checked yet, but when you take into that account, it's a pretty impressive conglomeration of conservation that we've done up there. So all this added together makes Woody Creek a pretty impressive spot in perpetuity.
So
Sign that conservation easement.
Will the beaver
Okay.
outnumber the humans?
probably for a good part of the year. Jennifer and Michael approached us early this year with this concept, and we agreed to split an appraisal of what these conservation additions would be worth. And the appraisal came in at $9,075,000. As you might recall, the year before that, Pitkin County supported some state legislation to bump up the percentage of the state tax credit that conservation easement donors can recover through the state transferable tax credit system, which is a pretty neat, unique system that we have in Colorado. So we got the appraisal. Everyone seemed to be pretty happy with it and suggested, well, why don't we divvy this up between the county open space fund and the state tax credit program. And staff were quite pleased when the Craigs came back and said, well, great, how about you guys cover 70% of this and we'll go to the state for the other 30%. And what that translates to is $6,352,500 that these conservation interests would cost us. And actually forgot one last thing that we put into this, which is on the lot that isn't subject to the conservation easement. We've agreed there will be a covenant on that lot that would limit the residential construction to the existing building envelope and protect that riparian area that Paul's talking about. So for that price, that $6,352,500, we would acquire all these things. And unlike all the deals I've been bringing in here for a long time, there's no new approvals required through ComDev to do any of this. Of course, we're poised to close on the Moore Ranch Conservation Project, and that is the latest in a series of projects where we combined some approvals with some open space investment to achieve a conservation outcome. This one is so blissfully simple. That's why we're smiling. We are simply going to eliminate some existing house sites. So I personally couldn't be more happy about this. The Open Space Board unanimously recommended that the county commissioners approve this ordinance authorizing this contract. I really don't have anything more to say, but I would love to hear from the Craig family about
Yeah, let me see if the board has questions.
Okay.
Greg,
Sure.
please.
Thank you for that. This is really exciting, and I'm very grateful that you're all here. This is making my day. I wanted to ask about the other side, the outline in white. That's the parcel. It'll still have the the covenant. Explain that a little bit more.
Sure. Well, that's known as Lot 5 of the Craig Ranch. And years ago, approvals were obtained through our community development department for those building envelopes on all of them that we've discussed, but including that one. And as part of those approvals, there is a development agreement with Pitkin County that does limit the development to that building envelope. What we're essentially talking about doing is taking some of the elements of that development agreement that currently applies and making it into a permanent covenant so that when we look back and think that we've tried to protect, it's about a mile, I think, of Woody Creek, that forevermore, that we'll all know that that's protected.
Got it. I did have a question earlier. I talked to Dave just briefly about it, Dave Myler. So I was concerned about who's going to take care of the land. We neutralized it to the point where if the ranch manager has to commute in from Newcastle, I feel like we might be shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't think that's the case here, but I worry about it. Is there a provision to have on-site caretaker, ranch manager, somebody who's going to walk the fences and?
Well, of course, it's up to the Craigs what they want to do with the reserved home site there. But we've got lots of examples in the valley of folks leasing agricultural land and maintaining it from houses that are on other properties. So Paul can probably speak better than I can. The demand for leased land is pretty strong.
It is, and I think Michael would probably point out right now he's working on building a modest structure there where you could wash your hands, fill up weed sprayers and that kind of thing. So there will be a small housing. I don't even know what the square footage is. Pretty small.
We'll let you speak to it.
We'll let him speak.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna give you
Those are my
plenty of time.
questions. I'm eager to
Okay.
watch it go forward.
Steve, did you have any comments or questions before I have the Craig family come up?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing the Craigs there. I wish I could be there in person to celebrate this with all of
So
you.
whoever from the Craig family would like to come up and speak, you are all welcome. Carol, it's so good to see you.
I know, it's great. Oh, she's coming up too.
Carol, thank you so much for coming in.
Can I say something?
You
As
certainly
they're
can.
sitting down, I just wanted to say that my gratitude to the Craigs goes back to about 1989 when Carol and Jennifer invited me to live on the ranch. And I lived there for 2.5 years, and it was just the most amazing, wonderful time. And so that's when the gratitude starts from this end. And it's so much fun to watch this culminate now, years later, with us sitting here doing it. I'm so grateful.
What a brave family they were.
I know. They're still in recovery from it.
So that's
I
perfect for
didn't
you to
burn
be.
anything down.
Perfect for you to be here. So would you please, sir, it's been a long time since I've seen you. It's so nice to see you. Give your name for the public record.
Yes, Michael Craig.
And you will be speaking on behalf, or is everyone going to speak?
Well, we weren't actually aware we were going to be speaking, so we hadn't actually prepared anything.
You get to speak today, and you get to speak on second reading, so.
Do you have anything to say?
We're happy that we could work with
And you
with
are
Open Space. I
Jennifer.
am Jennifer Craig.
Jennifer, it's nice to see you, Jennifer.
It's nice to see you guys. But we were just really grateful that we were able to work through this deal with Open Space. Thanks to David, for helping us along in this process. And basically, I think for all of us, we have never wanted to see the land fully developed. That has never been our concept of the highest, best use of the land. So it's taken a long time to get to this point, but we're really happy to be here today and seeing this process move forward. So thank you.
And
for giving
Jennifer,
us the
weren't you
opportunity.
doing some kind of small sustainable ag?
Yeah,
there?
well, I had a farm on parcel 4, which we no longer own, years ago. And yes, I was growing produce there. And last summer I started another garden up on parcel 6, which will be encumbered by this easement, which I hope to expand in the future. I don't know that I'll be selling like on the scale that I was, but I'm just planning to grow produce.
So the easement would allow, the easement will allow for that. I want to make sure, because I was thinking last night, trying to remember the history, going way back with this parcel to my years sitting at this table, and thinking, what was Jennifer doing up there? Oh, she had sustainable ag.
I was growing, so in 96, I started growing produce, and then 97 was the first year of the Aspen market, and I was one of the first vendors in that market. And then I basically grew until I think 2010 was my last year growing commercially.
Yeah, I remember that 12 years in between when, yeah. So, and Michael, you are doing what?
I am,
Other than
manager.
pulling barbed wire?
yeah, exactly. I'm pulling a lot of barbed wire, but that's coming to an end. I'm building this small cabin on a parcel that's just adjacent to parcel 5. You can't really see it on the map. It's a 1 acre parcel up there. It was a parcel my mother left to one of our ranch hired fellow by the name of Danny Berry, and then she acquired it back in the 90s, and then in this estate planning she passed it on to me, and so I've been working on that.
So you will be hands-on.
Well, yes, it gives us, when we sold parcel 4, we lost our sort of base of operations and where Greg lived.
I'm heartbroken.
And so this small cabin, in addition to what Jennifer could do on parcel 5, the cabin that I'm building is about 990 square feet. It's essentially just a 2-bedroom, building that we can use when we're up there, and during hunting season we can be on hand, and just at times when we need to be there, so we're not commuting from Carbondale every day.
That's great. That's
So.
Great. And again, Carol, it's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in many years. I saw you coming up the walk, and I was really excited to have you here today. It's really nice. Thank you for taking the effort and coming in.
Well, thank you, Patty.
Yeah, and this is going to be wonderful, I'm sure. So I'm going to bring it back to staff or to the board. Dave Myler, did you have anything you wish to add?
Just very briefly.
You need to come up to a mic here.
It has been a pleasure for me. And it's been a pleasure working with Dale and Ryan Neely. It's just all come together magically, I think. And the Craigs are very humble. This is an incredibly important ingredient in their stewardship legacy in Woody Creek to be able to preserve this 800 acres. It's really important.
Yeah.
So
Thanks
thank you
for
for
being
your
part of it, Dave.
consideration.
Yeah, this is very exciting. This is a great way to start off our new year, I think. So I'm going to bring it back to the board for any further comments, questions. Greg?
I was just going to say, I'll flip a coin with Steve on who gets to make the motion.
I think you do.
But well, Patty thinks I should make the motion, Steve. But I did want to say also that you have set such a high bar, and I'm hoping other landowners in our valley, other people who are, looking for confidence to do something like this will use your example and talk to people like Dave and Dale and Paul and make it happen. I think we have a lot of property that's still in flux in this valley that probably ought to be preserved and to protect a dwindling elk herd and all the other ungulates and critters that need a place to live, our riparian areas. So I just have to say, you guys are the gold standard, and I'm so proud of you and that we have a community that welcomes and accepts this sort of activity, which is great. So with that, I'm going to jump in before Steve can and make a motion that we authorize acquisition of the Craig Ranch conservation easements.
Steve?
I am glad to second the motion, and I do have a couple comments too.
Yeah, go
but if
ahead.
Greg has other comments first.
No, go ahead.
So I know that my dad, Bob Child, would be very pleased with what the Craigs are doing here, because my dad always said the highest and best use of a piece of land like this is to leave it wild, leave it for the wildlife, keep it open, to not build a house on it. And I know every realtor in the whole valley would cringe at that, because they think that all land should have a house built on it. That would be the highest value that they could get from a piece of land. But the highest and best use, in my dad's view, and I believe now in the Craig's view, they're following the same thing, that it's to leave it like it is and leave it open. And the fact that Michael's taking down the barbed wire to make it easier for the wildlife to get back and forth, especially in the winter time when they don't have as much energy. That speaks so highly of how good of a conservation agreement that this is. And so thanks to the Craigs for doing this. And I remember it was months ago, maybe a year ago or so, that Dave Myler gave me a call and kind of floated the idea of this conservation easement and just asked how should they proceed with this. And I said, well, you need to talk to Dale Will about this. He's the one who can make it happen. And so I'm really pleased that it didn't take all that long on the scheme of things for conservation easements and to get this accomplished.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, did I second the motion?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I
you-
did second
You
it,
did,
yeah.
you did. And I'll just, just the fact that this parcel ties into all the other parcels we've been protecting in the Woody Creek area just makes it even that much better. My history, as I said, goes a long way back with this parcel, and to see where it is today and what you followed through on is just amazing. And it's not often that the Board of County Commissioners gets to do really terrific things. And the Moore parcel was one we recently were able to do, and this one just tops it off. So thank you very much. And I am going to call the question unless anyone else would like to make comments. Okay, we will have a second reading and public hearing on January the 11th, 2023. So on first reading, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
passes 3-0. Thank you very much. And the best of holidays to you guys.
Thanks
Nice
for
to
coming
see you
in.
all.
Have a good holiday.
I know, that was a great one. Thank you.
Clap for this one. I love it. Dave, thanks for coming in. Let's talk soon.
All right. Next item on our agenda is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, Town of Snowmass Village to support the emergency winter overnight shelter at the Schultz Human Health Services Building, Health and Human Services Building. So I think we have Lindsay on here, and this is great to see the partners we have on board for this. Thank you very much for reaching out and for Snowmass for joining in. So Lindsay, if you want to give an explanation here, this is a first reading. Will be set for second reading and public hearing on January the 11th, 2023.
Thank you so much, Patty, Lindsay.
Bye,
Director of
Jennifer.
Human Services. Can you hear me? You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Were you saying hi to me? Somebody else? Okay. So this is great. As you all remember, on March 27th, earlier this year, you approved an emergency ordinance for us to be able to hold residential services at the Health and Human Services Building for overnight winter shelter when it started to get cold. So I'm excited to announce that that has been running since November. They've had on average between 4 and 12 people a night staying there. So far it's going really good. And something that you had asked, I think Patty, it was you, was to convene some partnership to convene some partners to see if there was interest in supporting these efforts moving forward. So we did bring together some of our partners and found interest. There was already interest because they had been giving to different services close to this in past years, and found kind of a specific amount and we're able to move forward from there. So this is really an intergovernmental agreement approving this today for all of our share and what we're contributing to the to homeless services in the winter overnight shelter. City of Aspen has agreed to $25,000. Aspen Valley Hospital is agreeing to $35,000, and the Town of Snowmass Village is agreeing to $20,000 for these services. So we're really excited for this partnership and to be moving some of these services forward.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Nope, I'm good.
So Lindsay, the issues we thought that might come up when the shelter has opened, we haven't seen any of that come to be a problem that we need to address?
Nope, not at this time. The only issues that we're addressing is that people are having to park overnight if they're staying at the winter overnight shelter. So that's kind of a new thing that we weren't expecting, but it's causing some issues with plowing in the parking lot. So we're addressing those in different ways. We actually just met today with Aspen Valley Hospital and our facilities team to talk through some different solutions. So
Okay.
that's it. But other than that, the neighborhood, some of the concerns that we heard, we haven't heard much of.
Okay, so the only problem we have is technically our problem, and it's solvable. Yeah, great, that's good to hear. So, this is a first reading, and I need a motion to move this forward to second reading.
Also move.
Great, thank you, Steve.
Second.
Any other comments or questions?
Only
Yeah.
I really like Lindsay's glasses. I haven't seen those before.
I know,
Well
new
done.
hair too.
And the hair too, right? And I was just thinking, maybe we might need a valet parking service out there to shuffle those cars around so we can get the lot plowed.
Greg, if you can do that for me.
I'm on it.
You know what, Lindsay? I was gonna recommend the same thing, so we got 2 votes, so I guess you're in, Greg. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion
Aye.
passes. Thank you, Lindsay. All right,
Thank you so much.
next.
See you a little bit later.
Okay, you got a full day with us.
I know.
Next
You
is
do.
a second reading public hearing. Resolution of the Board of County Commissioners providing supplemental appropriations to the 2022 budget and amending the 2022 budget fourth quarter. Connie, hi, I didn't know we'd see you so soon.
Yep, last time of the year.
Last time of the year.
This is second reading of fourth quarter budget supplementals. These requests are mainly just cleaning up different areas of the budget that we've been watching throughout the course of the year. Many of them knowing that we would need to make an adjustment at some point, but waiting till we could fully quantify it. The total expenditures of the county's 2022 budget would increase by $5,093,317. But there's also an offset in revenues of $3,816,996 for a net increase to the budget of $1,276,321. I'll just briefly mention the requests that are included in this supplemental resolution. The first is in the Human Services Fund. It's the Supplemental Nutrition Program. We were anticipating some additional federal benefits to be ending this year, but instead with some ongoing COVID issues, they were extended. So this increases the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program by $350,000. There's no change to fund balance as it's a program that is fully funded by federal dollars, so no additional cost to the county. In the airport fund, there were 2 aircraft incidents earlier in the year. This supplemental appropriates the funds to cover the cost of recovery and cleanup for those 2 incidents, and the airport is working on receiving the reimbursement of those dollars. In the fleet fund, an increase in the overall fuel budget for the county to make sure that we have sufficient amounts to cover through the end of the year. This may not all be used, and if so, it just goes back into the fleet fund balance. In the risk fund for workers' compensation claims, our third-party vendors, CCMSI, have been working on closing out some open workers' comp claims. And so this is a request to increase the workers' compensation claims budget by $150,000. In the library fund, they are working on a project to digitize historic newspaper editions, and they are asking for an additional $90,000 to complete this project. Also in the library, the facility has run into some additional costs in 2022, partly due to the budget reflecting the COVID years rather than going back to normal, being open full-time. So there's an increase requested in the budget for personnel, natural gas, the boiler repairs, material supplies, and then overhead charges. For telecommunications, there's a supplemental request for Upper Red Mountain site rebuild. This project included the solar array. It also included a generator shelter remodel and microwave links. Public safety radio cost increases, also in telecommunications, are for consultant services, materials and supplies, and a microwave warranty. Then in the Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund, where we have a 0.5% tax and a 1% tax, both dedicated to transportation, most of these tax dollar amounts are passed through to RAFTA, Snowmass Village, and City of Aspen. We're doing a large estimate for the end of the year sales tax to make sure that if November and December sales tax comes in higher than projected, we've got the appropriation necessary to pay the pass-through tax out to these different entities. Then Conservation Trust Fund, an increase in the transfer to the general fund to make sure that everything we collect through the state's lottery funds can be appropriated to different open space and trails and other applicable uses. And then the last request is for overhead cost adjustments. There are 5 funds in which the overhead charge for 2022 was not budgeted high enough, and this is just adjusting those different budget lines. We went into more detail on all of these different appropriations at an earlier work session, but if the board has any other questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Any questions from the board?
No, I think we've seen it. I don't have any questions. We've gone over this.
I'm good.
I don't think there's any changes from the work session or first reading, so this is a public hearing. I'm going to open this item up to any members of the public wishing to speak on this item. Are there any members in the room? Seeing none. Is there anyone online here that we have? Give anybody a few minutes. Seeing nobody coming on this item, I'll close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the board.
I could make a motion that we approve the fourth quarter budget supplemental requests.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Connie,
Aye.
good to see you, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Yep.
Next year, that sounds good. And we'll start over.
And we'll start over with budget. All right, next is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners. This is a fun one to read. Approving or adopting the 2021 International Building Codes and repealing and reenacting Title 11 of the Pickens County Code, Buildings and Construction, Section 11.04, International Building Code, Section 11.08, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel, Section 11, National Electric Code, Section 11.24, International Existing Building Code, Section 11.28, International Fuel Gas Code, Section 11.32, International Energy Conservation Code, Section 11.44, International Fire Code, and Section 11.48, International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, no less. So please give your name for the public record. We don't have Tony here today with us.
Tony is online with us. Yeah.
There he is. Hi, Tony. All right, this is a second reading public hearing, so please, the floor is yours.
I am Jeff Erickson, Chief Building Official, and as Patty stated, this is the second reading for the ordinance adopting the 2021 International Codes. Title 11 is attached and redlined in Exhibit A, and it includes staff comments. The 2021 I-Codes adoption contains mostly code language cleanup, code section relocations, and a few key adoptions, with one of them being the Aspen Fire Protection District's reduction of fire sprinkler requirements for buildings 3,000 and above. Jan Legursky, the fire marshal, here is for any of your burning questions you may have.
Oh, that was.
I try to bring a little bit of Brian Powell in here.
I just caught that. I'm a little slow these days. Burning questions.
Oh, goodness.
I think that was that was pretty much the main question the board had.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest hurdle that we were trying to overcome, and I think Jan is here for that technical.
So the fire district has adopted their requirement for sprinkling, fire suppression sprinkling systems is 3,000 square feet. The BOCC's in our building code is 5,000 square feet, correct? Currently.
Currently, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So
And
the
that
code is now going
includes-
to adopt the same one the fire department has, and that's the question for the board. Do we lower it by 2,000 square feet?
Yeah, and just for clarification, this does not include Roaring Fork Fire Protection District
Right.
or Carbondale. So it's just,
So it would be inconsistent within the three districts. They're still at 5,000?
and yeah.
Okay, Jan, go ahead.
Roaring Fork decided to stay with 5,000 because they have a different clientele, if you will, in their district. There is, at least what I got from talking to Melly, is that there are a lot more people who are in the, what I say, normal income category? I'm not sure how to phrase that. What I looked at for our district, and our board did adopt that as of the September meeting. So it's 3,000 square feet or in an area difficult to access. I felt like the 3,000 was reasonable based on the changes we've seen in the past couple decades for building materials, which have gone from, back whenever the solid frame, solid wood, to the composite materials. Also, wildfire was a consideration since we are having more issues with wildfire scenarios compared to 20 years ago. I also thought 3,000 would not have a real big impact because most of the houses built in our district are over 5,000, or excuse me, over 3,000, but this still would not affect those people living in such as Smuggler Trailer Park, the portion that's in the county, Aspen Village, or Woody Creek. So if it's somebody who can only afford to build a home that's up to like 2,500, 2,800 square feet, they would not be impacted unless that home is in an area difficult to access. So those were, like I say, those were the primary considerations. I also had pulled up a UL Underwriter Laboratories report that showed the difference between flashover in a structure now compared to 20 years ago because of these changes with the building materials. At this point, you can have a single room engulfed in flames in less than 2 minutes, potentially an entire structure in less than 5 minutes. So all these things combined is why I decided to go with 3,000. I was able to justify it to my board. I did run into a couple people that wanted to go to 0 square footage, and I was not ready to go there for our district at that point. The city is going with 0 square footage, and I will obviously have to deal with that in particular with the city portion of Smuggler Trailer Park. So that's how it came about. That's where it's at. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I didn't know the city's going to 0 because that affects me. And yeah, and the affordability right now to build a Smuggler Trailer Court is through the roof. Just
Right.
where the city codes are now. We have two lots sitting empty because people can't afford to build.
Yeah, so I don't know the impact that will have as far as single-family, stick-built homes. My consideration more is with people who can afford to buy a single-wide or a double-wide modular. So I'm also looking at ways with that as to how a sprinkler system can be installed as inexpensively as possible. There are ways to do it, and I'm going to have to look at what kind of adjustments we can make for our requirements to help those individuals who fall into that category.
Right.
But that's not something you as a county
Have to deal with.
Right.
That's why I can vote on this because I'm not affecting what the city
Yeah.
does. But that was news to me that the city changed that and we weren't notified
Yeah.
specifically, so.
The other thing I would mention too is that sprinklers in a home, if there's a wildfire, a home being sprinklered is not going to protect it from a wildfire unless obviously they have exterior sprinklers. However, a home that is out somewhere within the county that does end up having a fire will prevent that structure from causing a wildfire. So again, that was another thing I was considering with this change.
So when you're saying in areas that are hard to access, does that take it to 0 square footage then?
It does, because I'll give you 2 examples. We had one home up in Lanedo that was definitely less than 5,000 square feet. In the wintertime, it would probably take us about 40 minutes to get there because of the road, because of conditions. Even going up Red Mountain, well, you know what that can be like. The North 40, even though that one is within probably 5 or 10 minutes at that time that it was built of a fire station, Ed required that one to be sprinklered because of how narrow the roads were and because of how difficult it was to access the individual homes within that subdivision. So that one, I'm guessing the average home was probably 1,500 or 2,000, maybe 2,500 at that time. And still everything was required to be sprinklered.
I remember that discussion.
Yeah, so there are different scenarios that we look at. And I do rely on the community, Jeff and everybody in the community development department for information, for resources. I mean, they have been a great source of information for me. So when it comes to that less than the square footage, it's not, for me, a black and white decision. We have to look at all the different criteria, the things that impact that. If it's 40 minutes away, that's pretty clear cut. If it's within that boundary of maybe 15 or 20 minutes, then it's really looking closely at the things that might impact fire access for that structure. So there are a lot of things that go into consideration for that type of situation.
What about building materials? Say if I was going to build 3,200 square feet, but I came in with a building plan that had really significant building materials that were fire resistant. Is there any negotiation level where I could come in and say, I'd rather build it right than have to pay the money to put in a sprinkler system? I mean, are you sneezing over there?
I did sneeze, so I don't have COVID.
If it's above that square footage, then no, I would still be requiring sprinklers, just the same as if it were 5,000 square feet.
Okay, so there wouldn't be wiggle room.
Site specifics.
Where there would be potentially, if you have an off-the-grid structure, that's one where I would be taking a strong look at it, just because for something like that, there may not be the potential to put sprinklers because of water source. But again, I'm just kind of...
Yeah, there's just some unknown circumstances that we may be looking at. And what about if I build, the square footage is, the livable square footage is 2,800, but I'm off the grid, so I have storage capacity, et cetera, for mechanical and all that extra equipment you need. Does that come into play with my 3,000 square feet, and then I'd have to sprinkle the whole structure?
Well, what we're looking at in both the building code and the International Fire Code is a definition of fire area. So that can be different from livable space.
Okay, because I'd hate to detract somebody who wanted to build the right house, but said if I go over 2,000 square feet or 1,000 square feet, then I have to sprinkler, and I can't afford to do both.
Right.
So they'd have to do sprinklers, and they may have to defer doing good climate action policies that Greg is promoting over here.
Well, I can think of one that we had, that was earlier this summer, I believe, off-grid cabin, and it wasn't feasible to put sprinklers in that. So instead, what my recommendation, I think probably from the building department as well, was to do things to harden that structure. The fire resistant materials and so forth. So,
Right.
like I say, everything isn't clear cut, you know, some things just simply have to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, great. That's good to know, because we want people to be safe, but it's
Right.
like Greg said, there's a balance, and it's hard to find that balance
Right.
these days on lots of issues.
Well, Patty, and the other thing I look at too is what people don't stop to consider, first line of defense actually for any fire scenario is a smoke detector.
Yeah.
And that is gonna warn people about something happening potentially before flames happen. And at the very least, give them time to get out. You know, a sprinkler system definitely saves lives because you can get out of the structure. But a working smoke detector will get you out of there quicker.
Sometimes you can get you to the point where you can put the fire out.
Exactly.
You have to
Yeah.
have a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love it if everything were sprinklered, but it's something that you have to take a practical approach to it
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So,
So there's an appeals process
Mhm.
for unique situations. Somebody's gonna come in and make an appeal. Would be
Right.
my first question, just how burdensome is that? And then the second question was, what does this add to a house, cost-wise? If you're building a smaller house and you have to do it,
Mhm.
presumably it will cost less than if you build a giant house and do it.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, it seems like it's an incremental additional cost. What are we talking here? Like, what does it do to the cost of a build? And compared to all the other things that people do in this community, or that we're
Yeah.
requiring people do?
Okay, so as far as the appeal process, I have the opportunity to look at these things at the beginning stage of the project. So I can do my review, determine if sprinklers are required or not. If it's a situation that's questionable, what I will ask them to do is bring in a sprinkler contractor just to confirm whether or not it's feasible to sprinkler something. So it actually isn't, there doesn't even have to be an appeal process. It's just something that is part of one of the steps along
In
that
the
way to
process.
approving a building permit.
Got it, okay.
Now, cost-wise, I hate to admit, I am not sure what the cost is. What I see with some of the projects is, and I'm thinking of homes that are definitely over 5,000 square feet, is like 11,000, or
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I am not sure. I would have to get that information from one of the sprinkler
I
contractors.
think it would be good to have an understanding of that. But also, I think, in the wild urban interface, any place where your home on fire could cause a wildfire, I think this should be,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, my house doesn't have one, and my grandfather, but what I really need to do is figure that out.
Yeah,
you are grandfathered unless you
I'm-
do some substantial
Yeah.
remodel.
yeah,
I'm worried about water resources, but we're talking about putting out the fire in an individual house. So it's
Right.
not like all of Brush Creek's sprinklers would turn on at once, because that would deplete the water in
Exactly.
about 7 seconds.
right.
So
And again, for the most part, those individuals who can afford to buy something at Woody Creek or some of these areas, okay, another house I can think of was right off Highway 82. That one was not required to be sprinklered because it was close to the Aspen Village station. And I think that one actually was under 3,000 square feet, so even now it wouldn't be. But now, if it comes to a smaller house, we can also look at what is referred to a 3-head calculation for fire suppression purposes for the hydraulic calculations versus a 2-head calc. If it is a house that is on a water system, such as up in Brush Creek, then that will also save them. They would have a water tap fee for tying into the system, but it wouldn't be the same as a house that is on a piece of property somewhere where they have to put in a 20,000 gallon tank.
Right.
Then again, those structures are usually well over
Large.
5,000.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I say with the 3,000, I felt like I was covering it well. not to put an imposition on people who could not afford something larger.
Got it.
Okay,
So-
last question I had was
Yes, sir.
just about the, you know, are we gonna have, is there going to be an issue with the other districts that don't have the same rules? I'm gonna assume it's not gonna be that big a
No.
deal.
No, because it will be, even when you look at Roaring Fork Fire, Snowmass Village requires everything to be sprinklered within the city limits. So they're already dealing with different requirements within their district versus elsewhere in their district. So it's just that contractors will have to deal, like they do with everything else, with requirements in this location versus a different one.
Got it. We're used to that.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And just real quick, going back to the 20,000 gallon tank, we had brought
Yes.
that up just briefly. Is that based on house size? So if I have a 10,000 square foot house, I need 20. If I have a 5,000 square foot house, do I still need a 20,000 gallon tank?
It's based on the water supply that is needed. Because in one of the NFPA standards, it states there has to be a 20-minute water supply. So with something like that, we're looking at the distance from a fire station. For the most part, the minimum is a 20,000 gallon tank. We do have a couple situations where they have been closer and we've allowed them to do a 10,000 gallon tank.
So again, site specific.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And just so we know, a 10,000 gallon tank is not very much water if you're trying to fight a fire.
It's a 10-minute supply, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So it goes, you know, I think Brush Creek, our total tank for the entire neighborhood is minuscule for what, you know, we can't contemplate using water or your hose or anything else to put out a fire out
Yeah.
there. So
Well,
it's a little
that's what
bit
happened at
scary.
Little Elk Creek. Was it Little Elk Creek that had the,
It was, the house was outside of Little Elk Creek,
Yeah.
but it drained
drained
Right,
their
doesn't
water,
take long to
all
suck
of their
all the water
domestic
out.
water?
Yeah.
Mm.
Took 100,000 gallons.
Yeah.
Of the community tank.
In no time.
That was interesting,
Yeah.
and no fire.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I no more questions for me.
Steve, did you have any questions?
Well, my question was, what size of tank would somebody need in a rural area? And that's all been answered, so.
So, thank you, Jan. Thank you for coming. And looking at the fire district boundaries, boy, is it confusing.
You know
I
what?
mean,
Yeah.
we got a little district here, and then we got a big district here, and then we got a little district here, and then this one overflows this district. So,
Yeah.
good luck.
I rely heavily on Pitkin maps.
Oh, you did. This is interesting.
Oh, yeah. And I recommend that website to contractors and whoever
Yeah.
else.
They do a great
Yes,
job.
the boundaries between city, county, and fire districts actually drives me crazy. You know,
That's part of our job.
If I
You're
was
doing
king,
well.
I'd rewrite them. I'd replot them.
Yeah,
Can
Steve?
One more question I had
Patty,
too.
I do have a question about hardening houses, and I'm thinking of people who live in a wildfire, potential wildfire area. I think getting more publicity out on, like, specifically, how does one go about hardening their house for, like, what kind of materials should they think of replacing their siding and their roofing material and all of that? I think getting that kind of publicity out to the general public would be a good idea, just to help people for planning what they ought to be doing for creating a defensible space and hardening their house at the same time.
That should all be included in their land use approval.
Those thoughts and suggestions.
yeah.
I just replaced my old wooden skirting with recycled metal roofing.
There you go. I need some of that.
Yeah.
I have a question just regarding other technologies. Could you put in a sprinkler system that had a foam system versus a water sprinkler? Say in a dry
Yeah.
climate where water is scarce,
Right.
is there an alternative that might be maybe more affordable for a
Right.
small house?
There are. Again, that would be up to a sprinkler contractor to show it. It would have to be a listed system. There are actually dry systems, and I'm not talking about dry sprinkler piping, but where it's almost like you have a fire extinguisher
Right.
that would,
Automatically.
yeah, so it's a powder that's going out. There are water mist systems that use a lower volume of water. So yeah, there are alternatives. And
Bless
as
you.
long as that sprinkler contractor can show that it meets the requirements of the code, of the NFPA standards, then yeah, that's definitely something that can be considered.
I think it'd be great to delve into the, the lower water use devices.
Yeah.
If those are feasible. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Steve, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, you guys have anything, staff, anything more for us, Suzanne?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think Steve should make the motion on this one.
Steve, Greg thinks you should make the motion on this one.
Only because it'll take like 5 minutes to read it.
I'm gonna try to do this
Try
without.
writing it.
You can
without
simplify if
repeating
you would
all the
like.
things that Patty already read. So I would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners adopting the 2021 International Building Codes and repealing and reenacting various sections of the Pickens County Code regarding buildings and construction, International Building Code, International Mechanical Code, National Electrical Code, International Existing Building Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Fire Code, and International Swimming Pool and Spa Code.
We like that last one the best.
He didn't mention all the various section numbers. Could you repeat that? I'm kidding.
I'm
I'll
gonna take
second
that,
it.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any other further comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait, it's a public
Aye.
hearing.
Oh, it's a
Public
public
hearing.
hearing. She didn't
I'm
call.
gonna
You didn't already
retract
do
I
my-
that?
will retract my vote.
Okay.
I take back the
This
second.
is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public in the room wishing to comment on this item on our agenda? Looking at one member of the public, I see no comment. And I see no one online.
Okay, well, Steve's gonna have to read that again.
I'm gonna close the public hearing. I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor now, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Jan,
very
for coming
much.
over. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. Our response time, by the way, is quicker than that. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Your thoughtful analysis of this and the proposition.
Yeah,
I
you
like.
bet.
Next item on our agenda is, do we have Dan with us back? Yes, there he is. This is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners approving a third amendment to ordinance number 21, 2017, and approving an amended lease agreement between Jedediah Aspen LLC and the Board of County Commissioners for the food and beverage concession at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport. So Dan, are there any changes to first reading?
No, ma'am, no changes.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? You want to, Dan, you can just briefly give us an explanation for the public, because it's a public hearing?
Sure. So this is seeking your approval of the first of two optional extensions to the Jedediah Aspen lease at the, which provides the food and concessions at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport Terminal, and is also moving to extend their business to provide food and beverage services to some of the private aircraft that are out there as well. With the option to extend their lease, Jedediah approached the airport to see if they could add some additional revenue options for the airport. They've raised their MAG significantly. They've agreed to increase the amount that they're paying for their utilities, and they've also agreed to increase the percentage of overage on their sales, not only from their current business, but also the additional business to the private aircraft. So all of that, and you can see in your agenda information summary there, some of the estimated additional revenue to the airport from this revised optional agreement.
Great, thank you. Steve or Greg? Greg?
Sure. I'm fine with this. I'm hoping that Jedediah is looking at our climate action plan as you're bringing this forward to us. And I think we had a discussion just about disposable, materials, packaging materials that, they leave the cooler and go through the cash register. They eat the food, and in 5 minutes, the packaging is discarded, and it's an opportunity to come up with some really great ideas for compostable packaging and safe packaging that is serves the purpose but doesn't leave a large pile of plastic or styrofoam in the trash. And I happened to have a conversation with the CDPHE Safety Health Food Safety Inspector who was at our Board of Health meeting last week, and I said, are there any restrictions on what sort of packaging is necessary? Do they have to be plastic, for instance, or styrofoam? And he said, no, not at all. If it's safe and hygienic, we could, and Jedediah's could set a high bar by putting in packaging that is compostable or easily disposable without making more landfill plastic. So I'd request that as part of their. I'd put it in the contract, but I don't want to stall things.
She said she was going to look into it.
But I think she's going to look into it. If you could just highlight that that's where we're looking, and I'll be looking for that the next time the contract comes forward. Thank you.
Or the next time you eat at the airport.
Next time I eat at the airport. Yes, that's right.
Steve, do you have any comments or questions?
A couple comments. I remember when we first approved the Jedediah contract, when we were meeting over in the library when our new administrative building was being built, and I remember the figures that they would need to sell so much per year before the county would get any of the extra percentage of the income. Wondering if is this going to be successful for them? And I am just so pleased that it's been really highly successful for Jedediah's. And I'm really pleased it turned out that way. And it's, they're willing to share some of their profits now with the county. And I think that's a good thing that it's been a successful business there at the airport. And I'm curious, when we get to the stage of planning a new terminal, I presume Jedediah's will have a good spot in there for continuing the food service. Maybe they can provide food service on both sides of on both sides of the security at that point.
Yes, yeah, and we're hoping that there will be multiple opportunities for multiple vendors in a new terminal.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Anything else from you, Dan?
No, and just wanted to point out that Rio Borough is on the line in case you had any questions.
I
for
didn't
her.
see her.
She's one of
Was
the
she
owners.
there? Oh yeah, she is. Rita, is there anything you wanted to add? Thank you very much. I spoke on your behalf about looking into composting. I didn't realize you were online with us.
That's okay. I was nodding along with you. So yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to looking into it in January, and possibly I could come back to a meeting and kind of give you some updates on what I've come up with once we get that going, once I get some ideas going.
That would be
And
terrific.
That'd be
wonderful. Yeah,
That-
so maybe something in the spring, and I'll
That would
back
be
to you with some of that.
great. And maybe you can even inspire all the concessions at DIA to do the same and follow your lead.
That sounds good. That would be fun too. So other
That'd
than
be a
that, thank you very much
big
for
job.
considering this. And I hope you all have a happy holiday.
Great, thank you. So this is a public hearing. I'm going to open it up to members of the public. We have 2 members of the public in our room, and I don't think they want to comment on this item. They're shaking their heads. We do not have anybody else online, I don't believe. Abby? So I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a motion. And I will make a motion approving a third amendment of ordinance 21, 2017, and approving an amended lease agreement between Jedediah Aspen LLC and the Board of County Commissioners for food and beverage concession at the Aspen-Picken County Airport.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. And I closed that public hearing. So thank you, Dan. Next item is a ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners prohibiting both the consumption of alcohol and on unlicensed public premises and the public consumption of marijuana for the duration of 2023, 24, and 25. Aspen, what are we calling it? Just Winter X Games? Just X Games?
Yeah, I think
And
Winter X Games.
I like the thing about public consumptions. Does that mean all the public consumes marijuana at the same time on these?
I don't think so.
I thought that was interesting, public consumption.
It means consumption in the open, in the public, in the view of the public.
So please, gentlemen,
Sure.
welcome. Would you please give your names for the public record?
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Burchett. I'm the Undersheriff for the Pickens County Sheriff's Office.
Parker Lathrop, Chief Deputy Operations for the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Nice to see you both as well. So this is our second reading and public hearing for the ordinance, as you stated, prohibiting both the consumption of alcohol on unlicensed public premises and the public consumption of marijuana during the 2023, 24, and 25 X Games. As I promised you, I think 2 years ago, I would bring this back to you during a normal hearing process and not as an emergency ordinance. So we're here prior to the first of the year. You're welcome. We met in a previous work session and described and discussed this ordinance, and it is an annual ordinance that we have discussed in the past. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have about the ordinance specifically.
Does the board have any questions? No. So this is a public hearing. So I'm going to open it to members of the public. Seeing no members of the public in the room, now that the members of the public are at the table, and seeing no one online, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Back to the board.
Okay, I heard you. I couldn't find my cursor. I guess I do kind of have a question after we looked at the X Games plan for this year. The fact that they're not doing any nighttime concerts, the concerts are happening during the day. And I think that this might lead to actually fewer people having trouble with substance abuse issues, consuming too much and then getting down to the intercept lot and struggling with their transportation and getting in their car and causing some issues down there. Do you think that is a reasonable assumption for what's going to happen this year?
Sure, I think
more of the things in daytime and not late at night when people would be drinking a lot.
Yeah, I think Steve, it's a great question, and I think it's a multi-day event, and it brings probably over 100,000 people over the course of the event. And our experience is whether it's daytime, and you can weigh in, Parker, whether it's daytime or nighttime, we still do experience individuals who are consuming both alcohol and marijuana. As they're approaching the event and going to have a good time. I mean, typically it's not about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, but on a Saturday, we will find at that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock during the daytime hours, there are still people that are out there enjoying themselves. And that's great. We want them to do so responsibly. We want to make sure that the other individuals that are not partaking in those activities, aren't put in a position to have to deal with that. It's a family-friendly event, so we're trying. This is geared towards mitigating all of those things. But whether daytime or nighttime, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference that they don't have concerts in the evening, because we do still see those activities specifically taking place during the day as well.
I think it'll be interesting to see how they're intermingling the concerts with the downtimes of the events. I think it's a great idea.
It is a great idea, and I think they did that a few years ago where they had, was it 50 Cent? Or
Yeah,
I forget who it was that came.
Over a number of years, they had different acts come in, and they from different music types, different scales of popularity, and so it's kind of good to see this come back. I think it's a great way to kind of keep things together. Whereas they had the X Games went on over here and the concerts over here.
Yeah.
Mix them together makes sense. And one thing I will mention with the intercept lot, and this kind of addresses the issue, is before there was this prohibition on alcohol in public, when everybody left the intercept lot end of night, there was tons of beer cans and stuff. People, just trash people left behind from that pre-gaming mentality of going to a football game and people party in the parking lot. We were seeing a lot of that at X Games, daytime and nighttime, and then people leave their trash. So I think this also limits the issues we have with alcohol and marijuana later, but it also will hopefully lessen the impact on the environment out at the intercept lot when people do leave.
For sure.
At least they should recycle.
You'd hope.
Right, Greg?
Recycle bins.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do. They're out there. It's just that they don't get that far.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think this is great. So, Steve, any more questions?
Oh, and I'd be glad to make a motion to approve the ordinance of the board prohibiting both the consumption of alcohol on unlicensed public premises and the public consumption of marijuana for the duration of the 2023, 2024, and 2025 ESPN Winter X Games.
I'll second that.
And
Do we need to amend it to take ESPN off that?
So we did take ESPN off
there is an
the,
ESPN,
for this
Yeah,
AIS.
so we need to just amend that because it's not ESPN any
it's
longer.
just the
right?
X Games.
Do you still have ESPN on yours?
It's
Yeah,
still
it's
on
on our
here, but the
agenda.
So-
ordinance itself won't have
And
that.
Jeanette updated the AIS, that was available online
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll fix
yesterday,
it.
so it's
Yeah.
it's already been
We're
removed.
good. And
So amended.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say you won't be coming back to us then for the next couple of years for this.
I can still come back if you'd
You
like.
can come back and visit. We like an update. We like to know how things go.
Happy to.
We usually do a debrief anyway.
We do.
All right, great. So thank you, gentlemen.
I always love it when you come back and explain the value your departments and the
IMT, yeah.
incident management, IMT take out of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always looking for reasons that we're still doing this and subsidizing it.
Absolutely.
And that's one of my reasons right there,
Absolutely.
honestly.
Yeah.
So anyway, always good to hear about that.
We'll definitely come back.
In the past couple of years, we've been able to kind of sort through the data of contacts and stuff, which we didn't have going into it. And so kind of seeing this event evolve after 2 years of more or less break. It'll be interesting how this year pans out and also with X Games and however it evolves, what it looks like in the future. So
It's great skill building and
Team
skill
building, for sure.
practice for you guys.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask if you would send us the information about the Incident Command Center,
I will.
so times that we may be worth our coming by.
Absolutely.
I think
We'll
that
do
would
that.
be great.
I will do that.
When the
So-
cookies come out.
Absolutely. Well,
I
that's the
see
most important
Creighton
part.
Burkholder coming. Are you coming in for a specific issue, Mr. Burkholder?
Hello.
You just came in to say hello to us? Dr. Burkholder, I should say. Are you just coming in to say hello to
I
us?
was trying to come to the end of the meeting.
Okay, for the TDR program? For the
Probably
TD
for cleanup of weed thistles. Weed mitigation?
Okay, well, go ahead.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Good
Thanks
to
for
see you
coming in.
again.
Have a good holiday.
You too.
As well.
Next item on our agenda. Okay. Where is she? There. Oh, hi. So this one, I technically have 4 items. The first one is a resolution of the board approving and authorizing a grant from the National Association of City and County Health Officials to review mobilizing or action through planning and partnerships 2.0 phase 3, continuously improve the community. So Ariel, you are here with us, and Suzuho, is she still with us or has she moved to Denver? She is already gone?
So they have not moved physically, but they have started their new job remotely.
Okay, because I ran into her at Valley View Hospital and didn't even know she was having a baby, so congratulations to her. Okay, so the item is before us, and would you like to do a brief explanation? This is the second reading public hearing.
Yes. So Pitkin County Public Health applied for a $5,000 grant from the National Association of City and County Health Officials, or NACHO, to participate in the redesign of a framework that they developed called Mobilizing for Action through Planning and Partnerships, or MAP. So what MAP is a framework that a lot of local public health agencies use across the nation to identify what kind of health issues their communities have and then create a plan to address them. This framework is being redesigned because in 2019, an evaluation was completed and they found that they needed to embed health equity and more community engagement into the process. So Pitkin County Public Health and other local public health agencies in the state of Colorado participate in a process called CHAPS, or Colorado Public Health Assessment and Planning System. And so while the steps of CHAPS and MAP are a little bit different, the overall goals are the same. And that includes identifying health issues within a community and then creating a plan to address them. So we applied for this grant because we do have expertise and experience in community health improvement, and we wanted to use that knowledge to inform the framework that is used nationally. So like I said, this grant is for $5,000, and if approved, it will be put toward my salary. And the work involved includes participating in a virtual kickoff meeting to review the project in the context, which will last up to 1.5 hours. Reviewing the actual materials involved in this framework. It's about 40 pages, and that's anticipated to take approximately 3 hours. Participating in 2 progress calls with NACCHO before the middle of January. Those are anticipated to take about 30 minutes each, so a total of 1 hour. Completing a feedback survey online, which will take about 1 hour, and then participating in a virtual focus group with all the participants in this grant, which is also anticipated to take 1 hour. And then finally, just submitting an invoice to NACCHO after the work is completed. And the invoicing process is simple, so that submission should not take too long. Do you have any questions? Anything I missed?
Board have any questions? We never really have a problem getting money. So we appreciate your putting in for this. We appreciate the fact that we're going to be awarded this money. Every little bit helps. So I'm going to look to the board.
I'd make a motion to approve the grant from the National Association of City and Council Health Officials. I pronounce it NACCHO.
It should be city and county.
City and Council
Yeah,
Health County to review mobilizing or action through planning and partnerships phase 3. But it is NACCHO, right? You got to tell me it is.
Yeah, it is.
Continuously improve the community. Thanks, Ariel.
Okay, I have a motion. Steve, do I have a second?
I will second the motion.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. Oh, public hearing. This is a public hearing.
Caught you again.
Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item on our agenda? Do we have anybody?
NACCHO versus NACCHO, that's the question.
That is the question. Nachos right now sounds much better. All those in favor? I'm closing the public hearing.
Oh.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right, now the next
Did
item.
we get in trouble with Julia for doing that?
For doing
Okay.
what?
Well, the public hearing kind of was wedged in there between the motions.
I know, we can wedge it in however best we wedge. Last
Okay.
time I wedged it after I called the question.
Okay.
This is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners approving a memorandum of understanding with Prowers County Hotline. So these are 3 items we have all on one agenda item summary, but this is the first one, the hotline we will take first. How's that, Lindsay?
Sounds good. Thank you. Good to see you all again. Lindsay Maish, Director of Human Services in Pickens County. So the Prowers County Hotline and County Connection Center, MOU, is one that we've had historically for a long time. They agree to answer all our child welfare related and adult protective services hotline calls on behalf of Pickens County. And so the MOU clarifies that Prowers County performs the tasks that are outlined in there and make sure that they get that information to us so that we can perform what we need to make sure that people are safe in our community. That's basically it. There's a small increase that's covered by our allocation, so net zero budget implication.
Perfect. Any comments or questions from the board? We've been doing this for some years now, haven't we? Yeah, this is great that Prowers County helps us out with that. We appreciate that.
Can I ask a
All in
question?
the whole state of Colorado, all 64 counties, Prowers County
Wow.
offers this service.
I was just wondering about call volume. Do we have any actual data on numbers of calls? Not specifically what the calls are about, but just wondering how often, how many calls do they field for us in a year?
It's certainly data that I could get for you.
That would
I think
be
it'd just be
interesting,
interesting to know.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put that in our first or our last quarter BOCC for our next meeting in February.
And it's great that it gives Prowers County something to do. They're
Yeah.
way out there on the plains. So this is a public hearing. So I'm going to open this up for the members of the public. Seeing only one person in the room. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item on our agenda? Matt, I see you on. Matt, did you want to comment? Or is he coming in next?
He's up next.
We need to move him over. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
I'd make a motion to approve a memorandum of understanding with Prowers County Hotline County Connection Center, and with gratitude to them for taking this on for us.
I'll second the motion.
Great. I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
passes 3-0. Next item is a resolution approving an updated Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Colorado Department of Human Services, Office of Early Childhood, Division of Early Learning Access and Quality for Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, or CCAP. So this is our third of our items on our agenda, well, second on this agenda
Second.
item summary. It's the third in your department, but the second on the AIS.
All right, so the CCAP MOU, this one was previously approved on July 13th. But if you recall, there were some counties that took issue because of the new Department of Early Childhood and some of the language that was in that MOU. So there were some counties that got together, proposed some changes in this MOU. So it just basically, the changes that you can see is the representation of the transition to the Department of Early Childhood, reflecting updated statute reference and language. It was outdated in the last one. And removing Colorado Works. This one used to be together, so Colorado Works and CCAP used to be together in past years, but since the Department of Early Childhood is a new department, it's now split, so they wanted to remove any Colorado Works language out of there. And then includes performance measures. This was the big one that the counties wanted to see, was the performance measures for timely processing and case accuracy requirements, both for counties and for the state. And then any additional feedback and input from counties through the recent work sessions. So this is the newer and updated MOU that we're bringing to you today. Nothing that we see any big issue with. We're happy to keep moving. Again, it changes our allocation just a little bit, but it's net zero. It's covered through the allocation either way.
I think the changes that were made, the suggestions sounded like they should have been made. You know, removing the language for public workforce, that kind of thing, and updating the statute. So I think those changes were appropriate. So does the board have any questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item on our agenda? Seeing no members in the room who wish to comment? Seeing no members online? I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
So I'll be glad to make a motion to approve the resolution approving memorandum of understanding with the Colorado Department of Human Services, CDHS, Office of Early Childhood, Division of Early Learning Access and Quality for Colorado Child Care Assistance Program.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
I got to get those 3 ayes in there. All right. The third item on this agenda item summary is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for the provision of child support services for the citizens of Pickens County by Garfield County. So I have Lindsay and I have Matt here with us.
Thank you, Patty. So this is an ongoing contract we've had for a long time. We pretty much offer all the mandated services that we're required to by the state statute in our local department, except for a few, and this is one of them. So child support services is offered through Garfield County, where they agree to provide things like paternity and child support to be established using for eligibility for appropriate methods on all of the cases. They enforce actions around the status of cases. They maintain all of the information for us, and data and reports are worked each month. They work with the goal of meeting all the performance goals that are established by the state, and they provide for us some different data points, including paternity percentage, percent of current support paid, percent of 4D cases paying on arrears, medical support, and percent of 4D cases with support orders. They also provide some of the training and personnel costs as well. This one went up a little bit as well. Again, it's a net zero because it's covered through allocation.
Perfect. Matt, did you have anything to share?
No, I was a little late in joining, so I apologize, but I just wanted to to let you all know that the Prowers County contract, it includes around 300 reports a year. And so I just wanted to get back to that and answer your question. Sorry, I wasn't on earlier for that one.
That's 3 reports out of Pitkin County or overall?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, 300. Between child and adult protection, we have about 200 child protection and about 100 adult protection reports each year.
From Pitkin County.
Yep, and Broward County, they take those for us and they do a great job. It's been a great contract with them, and we really appreciate the work that they do.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming back with that.
Matt, do you have any idea how many they do overall for all 64 counties?
You know, I don't. Some counties opt in to have Prowers County take hotline calls for them. Other counties decide to do that on their own. And us as a small county, this is a huge benefit because it would take about 25 to 50% of a staff member's time just to cover this hotline for us, do all the training and everything else. So a lot of the smaller counties opt in to use Prowers County, and some of the larger counties have their own little hotline that they use locally.
Good to know. Okay, thank you. So are there any questions from the board? Other related to this one? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. This is a public hearing on this item on our agenda. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? I'm seeing none online or none in the room. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
I'd make a motion to the board that we authorize an intergovernmental agreement for the provision of child support services for the citizens of Pitkin County by Garfield County. We were just talking about Prowers, and I just threw myself off. But I think that's where we are.
We have Prowers and Garfield in here. Do I have a second on that? Steve, is that a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, next item on our agenda is land use. So Suzanne, I have questions for you. Is this a no action needed item?
Correct.
And this is not a public hearing?
Correct. Oh, no, we do notice it, sorry. It is a public hearing.
Okay. So please, this was great information. This is definitely a document worth saving for our future discussions on this
I feel
item.
like I'm in the cold zone right here. It's like this cold air is hitting right here. Maybe it just shifted.
I'm not.
Thanks, Patty. Suzanne Wolf for Community Development. The annual update, as you said, no action on your part. This is just informational, but I think it's always useful information for you all, staff, as well as the public, to kind of see where, the TDR program stands and, all of that. So basically lots of numbers for you. Work a lot with Mary Lackner with GIS, who's very helpful in making sure that our layers are updated. So all of our maps and more information has all of the TDR sending and receiving sites. She did provide the nice maps for you in the package, and also with some of the data and whatnot. So always like to give her kudos for her help with all of that. But again, most of this is just really tracking and then, kind of putting the information together in a format for people to understand. But I'll just hit on a couple of the numbers since people are always interested. There have been 410 TDR certificates issued to date. So this is going back to 1997 when we first started to issue them. I think this graphic that's on the second page of the memo that shows where those TDRs are coming from, I think it's really helpful to see that graphic. Sorry,
Are you going to put it up?
I didn't load everything to put it up, but all of this gets put online on our website for anyone to be able to look at afterwards. But I think it's useful to see that, again, 70% of our TDRs have come from rural remote versus the various other ways that TDRs can be created. And just looking at last year, the 12 TDRs that were created, 2 were for historic designation, 3 for the limited development conservation parcel, and 7 coming out of rural remote zoned properties.
And the rural remote, just get administratively done.
Right, rural remote, TR1, TR2 are areas that are zoned to just get a TDR by right. So rather than develop, you just come to us, say, I want to get the TDR, we issue a certificate, we record the covenant against the property. It doesn't go through any more process than that.
Right.
Everything else comes through the BOCC to make a determination about the grant of the TDR. So there's more discretion in those other ones. We've extinguished 281. That leaves 129 out there, waiting to be extinguished. Let's see. I think it's interesting looking at the receiver sites, from the last year. I think you're aware, obviously, there are lots of approvals that have been granted over time. And, we're still, seeing TDRs come in on some of those older approvals. So that includes Chaparral, the Red Butte Ranch, and actually the Craig property. One of the parcels that was sold and is being developed, parcel 8, finally came through for their development approvals and extinguished a couple of those TDRs. So, some of those are coming in on approvals that were granted a long time ago, and some are more recent. See, this is great. We love having help. I thought I should reach out ahead of time, and then I never did. So,
She's great.
Thank you. You just pulled up the whole report. Okay. So there's that one graphic showing. I guess you had it in the best spot. The different ways that TDRs are created and the numbers associated with those. And I guess since we're here.
I love the price range that you.
I was going to get to that. I'll hit that, and then I'll pull
Sure.
up the maps just because
Great.
Mary does such a nice job. We'll go to those too. But
Yeah, love the maps.
right, I think everyone's aware that the market for TDRs has went way up over the last couple of years. As I noted, the highest sale in 2021 was 1.8 million. In 2022, 2.1 million. So that's our new high point. Most recent sale, December 5th, was 1.55. So seeing a little drop, people ask my predictions. I say I don't predict any of this. I like to see what the numbers show. So that's what we have currently.
It's better than Bitcoin.
I'm definitely not going there yet.
Predicting, you mean?
And so, Patty, actually, your point, we talked about what goes through the BOCC for approval. I do always like to point out the number of 9,499 acres of land that have been deed restricted against development as a result of severance of TDRs. So I think it's, important to know that piece too, that, right, in the end, a historic designation isn't then restricting acres necessarily. It's acknowledging that a property has some other type of restriction on it. But most of the ways we create TDRs do, end up with the property being deed restricted against further development or some limited development. So then, again, this report just has lots of information in it, comparing floor area approved through TDRs versus growth management, constrained site TDRs, where those have been approved, development that's happened within rural remote, so we know those are sites that would not come in for a TDR. I think last year we probably had about 6 of those that had been approved for development, and then when the TDRs hit a certain price point, people said, maybe I don't want to develop. So we had a number of those last year. We had one additional one this year that said, maybe I'll just come in and get the TDR instead. So we are seeing, obviously, that price point as providing somewhat of an incentive for some people to consider taking the TDR. So again, just lots of information, and then I will scroll. Oh, that was what you pulled. Oh, you just pulled that one up. Okay. We don't have the maps, but
I can send them to you. Does that help?
I have a question.
Do you have them right there? I have them pulled up here. Do you want me to send them?
Can you plug in?
Yeah, you
it?
just email them.
Okay. I really meant to do that earlier, and then
they're really useful maps.
just BOCC moderator? Or
Yes, that would
you?
work, yeah.
Okay.
So, I'll let you guys figure that out.
Give me a quick second here, and then I can.
3 there. It's really slow from here to there.
Could have done it faster with paper.
Any other questions while we're waiting?
I have a question.
For...
There was a recent letter to the editor and brought up TDRs about, just as a point of clarification, about the fact TDRs were created, the program was created to transfer development square footage into the urban growth boundary. That was one of the sites that we, I think, it wasn't just for that. It wasn't so the square footage would just go to the urban growth boundary, because we had really very little control over what happens in the urban growth boundary, because most of it's in the city.
Right. I mean, there's never, right, you know, there were obviously, and maybe still are, hopes that, you know, there could be some arrangement that county TDRs could land in the city, but that has never been created. That has never occurred. So it was never limited only to the urban growth boundary that I'm aware of. I might have to check myself on going way back to the very original TDR ordinance, but kind of in my realm of having been involved with this over a long time, there's always been some opportunity to use them. And certainly, you know, again, we've allowed them to create development rights in certain areas, and as well as additional, I mean, the whole concept of using them for additional floor area came into play in 2000 when we did a big code rewrite related to growth management. So,
well, I think this letter just led people to believe it was solely to the urban growth boundary.
I'd have to go back. I guess I'm not.
It was Cliff Weiss who wrote it.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to go back to that. And again, maybe.
I think that was our preference when it started.
I thought that was the original intent.
Yeah, was hopefully, we hoped that it would go there, but it was without getting a cooperative transfer program with the city, it left just this fringe of where they could go, which was nowhere at the, I mean.
Would Cindy have insight on that? I wonder.
Yeah, it's just a clarification.
Yeah, I mean, and I can go, like I said, I think maybe the very, very, very original version of.
I think it was a preference, not a.
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think again, there's always been, you know, over the, you know, over many of those decades that it's existed, yes, they have, you know, there has been the ability under the code to use them not only in the urban growth boundary, but elsewhere.
Obviously. Okay, maps.
So maps. Okay, this one is, so these are, you know, in the report, I try and distinguish between where we've granted approvals to land TDRs, which means they've had to go through a process to be approved. So whether that's for additional floor area or new development right. So this map walks through, let me make sure I'm getting the right colors. So the pink points are development rights. The yellow are additional floor area sites. And this map is just showing you where approvals have been granted, but they have not yet extinguished TDRs on those sites.
So approvals for a development right versus additional floor area, those are approvals but haven't landed yet.
Correct. And then, oops, sorry, let's go back. Oh, there's my other. Walking back, this is the rural remote development sites, showing where things have been built or not built, or permits issued. So again, this is just kind of looking at in rural remote. These are sites that would not see TDRs because their development has occurred. And then this Exhibit F is the map of sending and receiving sites. So green are sending sites, orange are approved receiver sites. So this is the entirety of receiver sites, not distinguishing whether they've now been extinguished on that site or not. You know, that other map showed you where they have not been extinguished. So again, you can see, you know, a lot of, you know, where the receiving areas are coming from. And, you know, a lot of those sending sites are clustered, you know, closer into the urban growth boundary area of Aspen, but certainly not limited to.
What are the yellow dots in those receiving sites?
Yellow dots are, oh, sorry, that does show the TDR certificate extinguished. So
the yellow dot does,
within those, that's showing, you know, giving you that subset of where, you know, some have been extinguished.
in
Oh,
winter.
the dot, the little yellow.
Yep.
So back to the rural remote map.
With the
So
blocks.
the little one, the furthest one up, not the one up Woody Creek, but is that the down Lower River Road? Is that the one up above Chaparral on that plateau? It says
Mhm.
built property.
Yes, that would be, yes, they did build one cabin
Up that little
on
dirt
those
road.
Chaparral remote parcels.
And the other ones are up Lanedo?
The other one's up Larkspur.
Oh.
It's up, yeah, if you continue up the road, you know, the end of
Well,
Woody
that's
Creek
wet,
Road.
there's almost over to the frying pan.
And yeah, most obviously.
Yeah.
Those couple up here are up, you know, Cooper Creek,
Yeah,
all the way.
interesting.
Badgecraft.
Maps are great.
Yes, thank you, Mary.
Yeah,
If you're listening.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
I don't know how she does it. It make me crazy. Okay, any questions further? I'm sure there will be from the board.
Sure. Steve, want to go first, or are you?
Steve, you want to jump in with questions or comments?
Well, the one thing that I noticed was if there are 129 available TDRs right now, and there are 210 approvals to land TDRs already, the approvals are already in place, I presume. That means we have a shortage of about 80 TDRs out there right now. And I know there's been, you know, there's discussions going on with the growth committee about where should the TDR program go, and I think this is a really interesting statistic for them to look at and for us to contemplate, because theoretically there could be about 80 people who cannot get a TDR, and yet they have approval if they could get a TDR to do build their project. So this kind of presents maybe a dilemma or an opportunity or something for us to make changes to the TDR program going forward.
Suzanne, comment? Is that correct then?
Again, if I just sort of stick with the yes, that's correct. There is more demand than there is supply right now.
Right.
You know, kind of what does that mean?
Greg,
longer
Greg,
term?
good point, Steve.
Yeah, being that there's more demand and supply, Steve points out that there are 80 out there that can't get a TDR yet or aren't willing to pay for the premium for it, so they're not going to be building their house 2,500 square feet bigger. Is that how we interpret that?
Potentially. I mean, some of the, you know,
Potentially, unless they
again,
wait.
some, you know, right, we have outstanding approvals for development rights as well as additional floor area. We have people coming in, you know, you'll see in the urban growth boundary, people don't have to get approval, you know, or Starwood to use the TDR. They're showing up with their TDR, going through site plan review and moving. So they're taking TDRs, you know, that other, you know, so there's always this movement, but I think you know, for some people, when they'll look at the price of that and go, well, maybe I'm not gonna, at one point in time, I thought I was gonna build the 8250 house, and maybe I won't, because A, of the cost of the TDR or the availability. I mean, that could affect that, obviously, over time. You know, we do have a lot of approvals on the books that they haven't acted on. So, you know, what does that mean, you know, after a period of time? Technically, the code would say they could still come in to use a TDR, but they have to be able to acquire one in order to do that. So
there's a positive and a negative, and positive and negative reverse on that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought to contemplate in our next meeting. I have something to talk about when we get together, maybe at the board retreat, about, for me, it's like we have very clear designated sending areas. The receiving areas are always, we don't really know where it's going to land. I sent Abby some pictures of my visualization of TDRs, you know, my middle of the night, you know, dreams about a fleet of TDRs flying over us, ready to land at any moment. Can you put that up? Is it there?
I can't wait to see what Greg dreams about in the middle of the night.
There's several. You can just scroll through them. But, you know,
did
that
you
I keep
have
thinking
to-
they're like
Were you hanging out at the Brush Creek Intercept lot or something?
I know. I just it's like an invasion, right? You've got a potential. Did you say there were a potential 211 landing sites out there? So this is like I think of a TDR as this large flying saucer. It's an invasion of them actually hovering over the town, and we don't know where they're going to come down, and they're going to deposit a 2,500 square foot bomb on
Greg,
us.
we need to give you some like Benadryl or something.
I know. See, this is in the middle of the night. So anyway, that's how I think of TDRs, because we don't know where they're going to land, and they represent, the kind of growth I think we've been trying to reduce in terms of house size. So I worry about that sort of thing. Thank you for showing that. So something to talk about is like, is there any way we could start designating, being more precise about receiving sites? And maybe that's the discretion of our board. But we hear about a TDR being lifted off one piece of property and then moved across the street and landed across the street, and you wonder, who's benefiting from this other than that we're creating the opportunity to build houses bigger when I think our ambitions have been to make them smaller. So that's a philosophical question for the board at our next chance.
I think the problem is if those little yellow dots are places that have already been approved for a TDR, I don't know how we can go back on that unless the approval lapses.
Right, but I don't think we have an obligation to make more.
Those do not currently lapse once an approval's been granted.
Yeah.
And again, I guess, Greg, to the point of, there are some designated receiver areas, the urban growth boundary,
right.
Red Mountain, we see a lot. And we have designated certain subdivisions in the rural area, Starwood.
Right.
Castle Creek Valley Ranch, I think Owl Creek, again, there are about 8 rural area subdivisions where, again, we codified saying, these are the places where we understand, we're okay with this, and any place else goes through special review.
Got it. So we have the mechanism to review that.
Right, and I would say more are coming through in those areas where we've said, these are our designated receiver areas versus going through that special review process. But we do, and we have, again, there are a lot that are out there from over time, where people may have gotten the approval, never exercised it. We don't know,
right.
What, would that happen?
I calculated,
in the future.
If it's 411 or something like that total that have been issued, I think that's what you had in there. That's about 1 million square feet. If everyone were to take 2,500 square feet for their TDR, that's 1 million square feet of additional floor space. And then the ones that we know have been issued and not landed are.
But some of them were issued for development right, not for additional.
So there's a
square
development
footage.
right also. We could break it down, and then we've got if you look, just take all the ones that they're floating out there now. That's about 325 to 500,000 square feet of developable floor area that we're contemplating here if these TDRs all decide to land. That's my UFO analogy.
Unless they land for a development right, and they can land for a development right of 57.5 or 3,500 if they don't have a development right?
2,500, and that would only be the urban growth boundary now.
Yeah.
Again, but.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's always right, also looking back at that,
This is great
9,500
information,
acres, of places that
Right.
are not being developed, so again,
10,000
right,
acres
it's
have
that,
been preserved in the backcountry. One of the other concerns that we could talk about this as well is that I think with the high price on a TDR now, what we're probably seeing are some TDR prospectors. All of a sudden, people who didn't think they had anything of value or weren't really too concerned about it now have an incentive to go and find a little patch of land that they could try to pull a TDR off of. And I'm not always convinced, whether it's for historic purposes or even just remote land, that there's a whole lot of
Constrained lot.
value, if it's a constrained lot. And so I think I'd just like to review that, because I don't feel I have a clear understanding, but I don't want to create a prospecting opportunity. So you've got, then people are going to be out scurrying around looking for a mining claim, for instance, that they could pull a TDR from, or.
And I think to the point earlier, right, for the most part, other than rural remote, TR1 and TR2, which is really Shadow Mountain, Smuggler Mountain. So those are limited areas, but those are the only TDR requests that you're not seeing. everything else to, get a TDR for a historic site, for a constrained lot, the limited development like we did with Stanley Deerhammer. Those all come through the BOCC, and you have the discretion, with that. So again, I think just to, help understand that piece. And then there was something else you said I was.
So real quick, section or attachment J, is that gonna go to the new Community Growth Management Committee? Because that's great, that's a great exercise. for
This
them
whole
to-
report will,
go to them.
have
It's-
forwarded to the growth
Yeah,
committee.
it's really good stuff, Suzanne. I wanna thank you for putting it together. Just the explanation, the layout, it gives the history, gives the uses. Because I know this is gonna be a big question for that committee, and we'll see what recommendations they bring back to the BOCC. But I wanna make sure that we can have the discussion at our retreat, but I'm not sure the growth committee will be back to us yet with their recommendations. So I don't want us to be making any firm decisions without letting them weigh into it.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
understanding it, delving into so we can really understand what's
really good.
happening and what's trending and with the prices getting as high as they have. Did you find the question? Was there
I
another question?
remembered what I was going to come back to in terms of sort of prospecting and I don't think we're seeing people trying to buy properties in rural remote to then be able to get the TDR off of that. But I do think it's important to note that we did practically 210 acres on the backside of Aspen Mountain and Little Annie area. Castle Creek investors, came in and got 5 TDRs off of properties back there, property back there. So, that was a pretty good acreage,
That was a good
again.
reason.
And we know they've owned that property for a long, long time. So,
Right.
again, I'm seeing that people who've had these properties, it's finally tipping the scale for them. Do I want to continue to hold on to this, thinking maybe I'd build something someday or not? Is
Right.
more what we're,
So
I
that's
think
where
we're seeing.
we really see the positive value of the TDRs are places like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And just the preservation of almost 1 million acres, 900 and something thousand,
9,500.
or 9,500,
10,000
almost
acres,
100,000.
yeah.
I was giving you 1 million.
I was like,
Well, it's a
whoa,
million-
wait
it's
a
a million
minute.
square feet of-
That's a really
Oh,
big
let's
number.
take that million
It's the equivalent,
acres.
it's 1 million square feet of floor space to potential landing. If
Yeah.
you could get 2,500 square feet for each one that's out there.
But some of them don't, for development rights or for additional
That's
square
my
footage.
UFO analogy.
I'm gonna be watching those night skies from now on. I'm not sleeping a wink, let me
Yeah,
tell
I
you.
took those pictures off my deck.
It was coming from that solar farm. Steve, please, go ahead.
Exactly.
So Suzanne, do you have an estimate on the number of TDRs that could still be pulled off of rural and remote land and the TR 1 and 2?
I do
How many
not,
different-
Steve.
Yeah. That would be interesting to try to get at least an approximate figure for that. Maybe more for the growth management committee benefit than for ours right now, but I think that would be an important figure to have. And I guess it would be a matter of looking at each rural and remote parcel and seeing if it has a backcountry cabin on it already, if it's already been sterilized, or if it has not been sterilized, then it could be potentially receive a TDR if someone came in and requested it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we have the ability to do that
Yeah.
with all the
That'd
data
be
and
good
GIS.
information.
We're able to, run that
And
kind
if we're
of
gonna
query.
look at the whole picture, we need to look at the whole picture. Any other questions from the board before I open the public hearing? All right, this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Creighton, did you come today to comment?
Well, maybe sort of, I kind of wanted to.
Just sit and, you need to be on a mic and give your name for the public. You
just
need
have
to
to-
be on a mic
Have a
You just have a seat, and then the mic will pick you up.
and give us your name, please, sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, this goes
I'm
to grassroots.
Creighton Burkholder. I'm a retired veterinarian. Seems like I've been here a long time. First first of all, well, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the transferable rights. But first of all, I wanted to compliment and thank mainly you, Greg, I guess. You guys own a piece of land at the end of the airport that is kind of no man's land, I guess, or maybe no woman's land, I don't know. But it's got the water and everything there, and I kind of come from a farm boy background, and for years I've done thistles there, and this year was a horrible year. It was the worst I've seen, and it was a tremendous pile we put there, and thanks to you, Greg, I think Steve Aldrich called you or whatever, you picked it up, and I just wanted to thank you guys for doing
Did you go pick
that.
up his thistles?
No, Public Works, Brian Pettit. I turned that on to Brian Pettit, Public Works, and they went out and cleaned up all the thistles that you had cut, because I heard you were out there cutting thistle, and I'm remiss because we should have thanked you before now for doing that. You've been cutting the thistles out there for how long?
Well, pretty much as long as I can remember. No, it varies from year to year, but for 10, 15 years anyway. But I don't know, it was significant this year, and hopefully it'll be all right. But so
Thank you.
That's it. I appreciate it. I mean, I could have hauled them out.
Creighton told me this story.
Jim Ward's. I had to borrow Jim Ward's trailer and try to do it, but I appreciate you doing that. That's the last time I saw her.
I caught Creighton at Jim Ward's house, and it was a very interesting afternoon.
I'm sure.
Well, and your issue passed.
Yes, it did pass. Thank you, Creighton.
I'm wondering if we can establish a thistle landing site area. You know, should we take them out to Jim Ward's, or maybe Steve would take them? Thistles. Where do we put these things?
You can compost them, actually. So, Creighton, did you get information about the transfer development program? Because you can pull the whole packet. Did you get the packet online?
No, not necessarily. I thought we have a place up on the ridge of West Buttermilk, and I always thought that we had the rights to that. And then last year I heard somewhere that we probably didn't have. Yet if we'd walked to the front of our lot and walked 20 yards across the road, then we would have had. And I didn't know if that's true or how flexible it is, and we're not trying to sell them or do anything right now, but I thought I owed it to everybody to find out, what our status was. Maybe
So-
just
I think we can follow
maybe
up.
I can
Yeah.
talk to
Why
Susan or
don't you
something.
follow up with
Yeah.
Suzanne, and you can figure it out what you're looking at and what
that
you
would
can
be
get.
great. I'd appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt your meeting. I didn't.
It's not. You're not interrupting at all,
Okay.
Creighton.
Thank
Not
you
at
very
all.
much.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Likewise.
There should be some title like the Thistle King, or Thistle Slayer, or something.
Well-
That's
We
a
should
tongue
do it.
twister. The Thistle Slayer.
Don't say that too quickly. Thank you.
I'm not
Thank you
looking
so
for
much.
glory. I just I appreciate your help.
Well, thank you.
And I'm still going to swing by the house one day.
I'm having trouble hearing a little bit.
I'm going to swing by the house one day here. I keep telling you I'm going to come by and visit.
I appreciate that.
I'll come by.
And how are your hollyhocks doing?
My hollyhocks are terrific, thanks to Creighton.
Thank you.
Thank you, Creighton.
Stay, I can talk.
Thank
Are
you,
there any other members of the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any other items for the board? Suzanne, this was great information.
For that, yeah.
This is keeper in my
This helps.
in my
I'll sleep better at night, knowing what.
I'm not going to sleep at all now after Greg's photo.
That's right.
You have to know the enemy before you.
Yesterday, I pointed out to Francie the fact that Suzanne was doing this presentation today at the meeting that Francie wasn't going to be here. And then Francie's really, of course, very interested in the TDR, issuance of TDRs and the use of them. And so I don't think she had gotten that far in looking at our today's packet and didn't realize how important this last item was for, an item of interest for all of us. So she appreciated the fact I pointed that out to her, so she can be studying Suzanne's information here too.
And like I said, I mean, we'll share this with the growth committee, with the P&Z, and we do post it on the website. So it's available on our, on the ComDev page under, TDRs. All this information is available to the public.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Since she's not here today, we can designate her as the thistle receiving site.
Francie's Ranch. Her farm.
Should
Okay.
love that.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Creighton.
Suzanne.
Good
This
to
is really
see you.
helpful.
Really
and
good
we'll
to see you.
dig in again at the retreat, I assume. Informational, if nothing else.
Okay, we're moving to open discussion, and I think we have a few items.
I do not have any for you.
Oh, you do?
Those were taken care of yesterday, so.
Oh, does the board have any future agenda? I mean, open discussion. Greg's thinking, he's pondering.
Not ready yet.
Steve, do you have anything?
No, not at the moment. I'm saving them for next year.
Well, I want to thank the two of you for joining me today. This is my last full regular meeting that I will be chairing. I will open the regular meeting on January the 11th and quickly thereafter turning it over to Francie and to Greg.
But we meet the 3rd, don't we?
That's a work session.
Oh,
I'm
you'll be
talking, this
chairing
is
the
my
work
last regular meeting. So Steve, I have a question to ask you. When I shift my seat, can I have your seat over there in the corner and move you into the center?
I don't
Think
know.
about
I don't
that.
know. We have to
I'll
think about this.
that.
That
You
was
know,
my
Jack
old
Hatfield
seat.
always sat over where I'm sitting.
Well,
and
that
he
should be
always
my
wore his
seat.
ball cap, and I kind of like it over there, but we can finger wrestle for it.
Okay, all right,
Wait
all
a
right.
minute. That should be my seat if Jack was sitting over there.
Sounds like a work session
No,
discussion.
I've always been over there. I'm over there because I made sure we had the door put in this building. All right, guys, so now, John Ely, you have joined us. Is there anything you have to say to us before I ask for an adjournment?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and happy holidays to you and to yours,
I
Mr.
just had a
Ely.
question for John.
Greg has a question for you, John.
Just, we had a long conversation on the phone. I really appreciate that, and thank you for that time you took last week with me. And I'm just wondering, is there anything I need to do to follow up, or have you made any of those calls?
I've made the calls, but I haven't heard back from anybody yet.
Okay, great.
This is a mystery topic.
Yep.
Oh, it's a
future
surprise. We like surprises, like spaceships. All right. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. It's 2:22. We did great, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I'll make the motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.
It's the last meeting of 2022.
It's our last yes, it is our last meeting of
At
2022.
2:23.
At 2:23. Oh, funny. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Grassroots. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Rich. And we are done for the day.